welcome to the shop. I'm working on one project here and using this plane, which is the number 5.5, to smooth the top of this board and get it flat. It's still got a little bit of a warp to it, so I need to finish that up. But it's getting to be Christmas time, and I got a phone call from my sister about a present for her son, who is a fairly good woodworker already in his own right, but apparently he doesn't own a plane. So I went through mine and I found this one, which I think is a pretty good one for somebody starting out. It's already in fair shape, but I'm going to tune it up and wrap it up and send it to him for his mom and my sister. And hopefully I'll show you guys what I do to tune this up and make it look nice and work well. So stay tuned and we'll get on it. So I wanted to describe this plane to you more. It's a Stanley number 5 jack plane, and it's a type 16 is what I had labeled. I always try to label when I have a plane, and so I know a little more about it. I hang it off the plane. It's a type 16, 1933 to 1941. So I took out the 1939 Stanley catalog, but first I want to read to you. This is the John Walters Guide to Identity and Value. And the 5 jack plane, made from 1867 to 1984, same as the number 3. The length is different. It's 14 inches long, 2 inches wide, has a cast iron base and a rosewood handle and knob, and it was japanned. And it's the user information in here is about it says the most common general purpose bench plane, and to many carpenters the workhorse of their toolkit. And I agree with that, and that's one of the reasons that I chose this plane for my nephew. It's a very good plane for general smoothing work and long enough to do some jointing. If he's doing smaller projects and he needs to join 2 boards together, say that are up to about 24 inches, this is ideal for that job to do the jointing on it so that the 2 match when you glue them together. It says it's ideal for rough surfaces where a coarser cut is desired, but also suitable for obtaining a smooth and flat surface, blah, blah. And all this is true. So that's John Walters' opinion in his book, and I agree with it. But the 1939 Stanley catalog, I want to show you the description that they have in there, because this is the actual company and what they have to say about it. It has in the catalog, it has quite a section about Bailey bench planes, which are Stanley planes, but designed by Bailey. And the complete line, it talks about the quality line. The shaded cutting edge is made from crucible steel of extra high carbon content. The plane iron, or the cutter, it refers to them as both. That tells you about the quality of the steel in here. There's other certain things about this model that are different than the earlier ones, and we'll get into that. And again, the number 5 in here, jack, 14 inches, 2 inch wide for the cutter. The weight they have at 5 pounds, and the price each, when originally purchased in '39, would have been $5.50. You can't get them for that anymore. But at any rate, so I wanted to read that to you. And now we can sort of get into me showing you some of the aspects of this plane that determine its age. So I just weighed this plane, and it's 4.4, even though the catalog said 5. So that's a little interesting. Just on the surface look of this plane, we note that this has a high knob, higher than the earlier ones, and it has a kidney-shaped hole here. So when you take this off, you see that's what's considered a kidney shape rather than a keyhole, and that helps you to determine the age of it. It's in very nice shape, and the edge of it here, just examining it, there's no chips along here, so that's a good sign. This is that it's a good quality plane without too much damage. Of course, we'll examine other things about it too as we go along. So here's the iron and the chip breaker here. And the iron, the logo, see if we can come up in here and catch the logo. There you go. Stanley in the keyed and made in USA. Looks like somebody had done some hitting on this at one time or another. We'll try to clean up some of that. And here's the chip breaker. And on the back of it, take a look at the iron. Now the iron looks like it's been sharpened fairly well, and it's still fairly sharp, but it seems to have a hollow space right there. So we're going to try to correct that so that shavings come off nice and smoothly along that edge. So there you have it on the iron. Let's set that aside and take a look at the frog. And you see the shape of the frog. That also determines the age of the plane. It's a key feature that changed over the years. And then in here, we have to do a little cleaning up of this area here. And Stanley here, this is in good shape. It's nice and snug. And the disc seems firmly in place. It's got the larger brass adjustment knob. And it also has the frog adjustment screw down here. The handle itself is a beautiful dark rosewood, and it looks like it had been repaired once here. So we're going to polish this up as well and make this look nicer. This is nice. It's a smooth bottom, no corrugations, as you'll have on some of the planes. And we'll do a little flattening to this as well, clean this up, and it looks like it's a good vintage number 5 plane. So here it is. Let's start taking it apart. We'll start with the screws for the frog. Nice, snug, but not rusted in place and removes easily. These are all good signs. You want them to be snug, but not overdone. Also, if you notice this bolt that goes through here is the hold down, nice and not wiggle loose, but I can move it with my finger as I should. Now we'll have to see about the front knob one. Very nice, loosened very easily. And let's see what the nut looks like. It is proper for this plane. Some of the barrel nuts come straight down like this, and it's solid brass all the way from this edge down to here. It just looks like a big barrel. But these ones are the later ones, and they have this hollow space in here refined in it. But looks very good. Minor rust there, so we'll clean that up as well. And let's take a look at the knob. Look at this beautiful rosewood. Look at that beautiful rosewood, and there's no issues with this front knob at all. That little bit there is typical, and that's just a fault in the wood, but not a problem with the plane. Very nice. Let's continue taking it apart. So we remove the frog and set that aside, and we're going to go ahead and take off the rear tote. Loosen this screw first down here, which is a steel screw. And it takes a different screwdriver than we were using. We want a nice long one and a skinny one so we don't mess up the front of the tote as we're doing this. The handle is pretty valuable for these planes. So here's the steel bolt that holds the front in. We'll set that right in there for now so that we don't lose it. And let's go ahead and take this off, and I'll switch back to the other screwdriver, the larger one, because you want, whatever screwdriver you use, you want it to match the slot that you're using, so you don't want to damage the slot. So here are all of our pieces for us to start cleaning them up one by one. So here we have the tote. It's a little dull, and so we're going to put it on the buffer and clean it up a little bit. Little jeweler's rouge. You really want to be careful doing this. show you what this jeweler's rouge did.
And that's just buffing the rosewood. You see, rosewood has so much oil in it that it'll polish up just on its own and really does not need an exterior finish, although this jeweler's rouge is carried in a wax, so it does polish and wax at the same time, but you can see the reflection in that. And so we're just going to go over the rest of it and continue. So this is how it turned out. You can see here, the white part here is the wax that's the carrier for that polish. But here you can see the rosewood in there, and we want to show it off some more. So we're going to go ahead and put some Alfie wax on it. Now, Alfie wax is when it dries, it'll dry to be a hard wax. And I like getting wax in this little hole here a little bit. And you can see the wax is going on fairly thick, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub it and move it around. I'm not going to keep loading the rag with the wax. I just want to get a good coat across the whole piece, and then I'll buff that out later. But this is pretty much to help protect the wood. Rosewood is so oily that it really doesn't need a lot of protection as far as moisture is concerned. It's such an amazing wood, but we want to get a nice polish on it, and we want to be able to see the pretty rosewood grain underneath all of this. So we're going to let this dry actually for quite a while. It does take a while for this stuff to dry, but it can sit down and it can wait because we have other work to do on the plane. Now we need to take apart the frog. So we need to remove this adjustment knob in the back, and right hand, it retreats, and it's made of brass. It's the larger size, which is fitting for this period. So we're going to take that off so that we can polish it, and we're going to remove this piece. This is the adjustment on the frog for the piece that will make the frog go forward or back, and this is necessary for that. We're going to clean all that out next. So I want to get rid of some of this staining here and clean up this logo and try to get some of this little ridge here off and here. So what I've got is some emery paper here and some liquid wrench to lubricate it. This is 400 grit, and we'll start with this side and just working it on the granite stone, rubbing back and forth. I don't want to block your view. And I'm staying pretty much in the direction of the iron because I don't want swirls there. I want it to just be what it should be. And it's interesting, you can see how fast all of this black comes in. And all of that is the oxidation in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to wipe that off and clean the rest of it up. So the chip breaker is another thing. This edge here, we want it also to match well to the iron. The iron goes under here, and we want this to clamp down to it. So we want to make sure that is also nice and flat. And so we'll give it a little flattening there. And then we can come and look at the edge. And you can see that there's this shiny part right there across the edge, and that's where it's going to touch the iron and clamp down this way. So want to make sure that that front edge is good and flat. Okay, so while we're here on this emery, we're going to add some more and work the bottom of the plane. I'm not going to do too much now. I just want to make sure
what are high spots and what are low spots, and see what comes up shiny and what doesn't. And we're going to do the final. We're going to put the frog system in it because that can put tension on this body, and we want to pay attention to that so that when it's together, it actually functions well. So we're just checking to see if there's any high or low spots on this. Make sure there's no rust, and there doesn't appear to be any rust on it. But we're going to come back and do this again once we get things together here. So we're getting a little more wear here than here, a little less there. So we want to keep an eye on all of that. And that is enough for now, and then we'll put the final on it once we get it together. Now we need to clean up the inside and the Japanning. So I sprayed some Croil in there, all in the inside, and it's good for the Japanning. We'll put a little WD-40 in there as well. Won't hurt it. And we're going to lightly just take some steel wool, which is 4/0, so it's very fine. And we're just going to come in here and do a little quick wipe down. I'm not trying to wear anything, or just get the dirt loose in there. And then we'll come back in with a rag to pick some of it up. But that's a pretty simple, straightforward thing to do. And it helps lubricate the iron. Any place you feel a little roughness on this edge, I'm just knocking that sort of roughness off a little bit, but there isn't much there. And that's it. That's all I want to do to that. Now I want to clean it off and see how the Japanning is, and test that out. So my terry cloth towel soaks up some of that stuff, and let's take a look and see how it looks in there. Wow, it looks really, really good. The Japanning is in nice shape, and you can see when I dry it, the reflection in that. So that's some really nice. Now, Japanning is a baked-on finish, and restorers are now going back and finding those old formulas that Ford and Stanley used on these things. But Japanning was very common back then because it was a very hard, dense finish, and it protected the iron. And but it oftentimes, because it was put on so thickly, it would chip off in places. But this one is in really nice shape. Now, this is very brown here still. So I want to come back with that 3M pad and clean off that stuff. And but this is in really, really good condition. Look at that finish on it. These 3M pads work great to get light rust off of iron. And you can see how brown this is here. And if I just go over it lightly, it doesn't take a lot of force or anything. And there's no vinegar involved, no chemicals involved. A little bit of the oil for lubricant, I guess. But now you can see that edge. You can see the bare iron there and no more of the rust. We'll do the same in the front here, where it's still a little brown. And it takes very, very little to bring it up to snuff. Looking good. And we'll do the same to the back. Most of the parts are nice and clean. I need to pull a little bit right in there. But this looks all very good. The chip breaker is nice, clean, flat here. The brass adjustment screw is polished, ready to go back in. All the little bits have no rust on them, nice and clean. The rods, the bolts at the top, and the iron looks pretty good there. You can see a little bit of that mushroomy still barely there, but I think that's good.
And this plane was made in 1940. And the reason I know that is that on the iron here, this is the 4th quarter of 1940, stamped right there. So here's a little point of interest. The japanning is good. There's a little bit of wear on one side here, but this looks all very nice. Once we get this back together, the frog in place, we'll do a little more flattening, but we are just about there. So our knob is looking good. Might need a little more buffing down here, but we can do that on the plane. And so we're going to go ahead and set this in here and tighten this down. Snug it up. Feels good. And now we have to do the same for the rear handle. Now, what we want to do is we want to start with the long rod, and then we'll put this front screw in because the tote will move back as we go. So, move the lateral lever over out of the way. And you can feel it biting, starting to bring it down into place where it needs to be. And we don't want to over tighten it. We just want it good and snug. That feels good. And now we'll put this front screw in the front of the tote and go ahead and get that locked down. Okay, now we've got the frog on. Everything is in place. And so what we're going to do now is go ahead and lap the bottom of this plane. So here's the plane, and I've lapped the bottom, and it seems pretty flat. It could probably use some more later. And the frog is back in. All the pieces are back in. This is not set yet because I haven't put the iron in yet. But we'll do that now. I'm going to set the iron, and it's the blade is considered the iron or cutter. And so what we're going to do is we're going to keep it very tight to the end, even though we don't want too much exposed there. We want to keep it nice and stiff for that sharp edge. But we want to try to keep that edge parallel. So that looks pretty good. So this is what I'm talking about. It's about a 1/16 of an inch that the iron sticks out past the chip breaker. And but you do want to make sure that the chip breaker seats itself well right here. So I've got the iron set in there now with the chip breaker. I put this on first, tightened this up, and then got it to the point where it's just a snug little clip to close it off there. And then I sighted down here, and I don't know if I can get you to see this or not, the iron looking straight down there. Wanted to make sure it was nice and even across here, and it is. And so we're ready to try it out on some wood and see how it does. So I've got a piece of maple in here, and it has some knots. It's spalted. I'm going to back the iron out until it doesn't grab. Now, that's just a little bit too much. I want to take it really back to where it's just barely planing the wood. There we go. So it's just barely exposed
and I can sight down the plane this way to see how much there is exposed. Then I can start advancing that knob slowly, just a little bit. You got to turn it up to where it catches. So there we go. Now we're testing it out, and we're getting super, super fine shavings. And that's where we want to start. And then we can reach down with this finger and just nudge that down a hair. And that's advancing the blade a little bit each time. So each time we do it, we'll get a little bit thicker shaving. Do it again. Just a nudge, not a lot. That's getting to be a nice shaving. And I'm doing very fine because there are some knots in here and I really don't want to bog down with them, but I'm going to go ahead and advance a little bit more. And this is really all in the tuning of it. But once you get going, you won't have to do this every time. So advance a little. Still a super fine shaving. Advance a little more, and it's just a nudge. Come straight through. Gives us a nice surface and a good shaving. I've switched out woods to a piece of pine. No knots, clear. And the shavings are beautiful. Now that's a nice full shaving there, that width, see? What we want to do is, while the shavings, it's nice to get a full shaving like that. What's more important is that when you're jointing, that this is a straight edge. We can test that right now here. And there is no light under here, so it's perfectly jointed. And if you put two boards together and you plane them at the same time, then you reverse them, they'll give you a perfect joint at no matter what angle you do it at this way. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. You know, when I use one of these planes that belonged to my father or even to just another craftsman that I'd gotten, it reminds me of them when I use it. And I appreciate the life that a plane has had. In this case, it's a little special because I'm passing it on to my nephew. And I think that it'll have a life of its own with him. And then maybe it'll be carried on by his sons. So it's kind of an perpetuating the story, and I like that. Particularly in this holiday season with Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and all of the other familial celebrations that people have, celebrating each other and showing love. I think it's an important part of our humanity. So I'm really glad you came into the shop today and shared this with me, and I hope he enjoys it as much as I've enjoyed the years of using it. And I hope he makes that same connection. And I hope that you all have a safe holiday, and everybody just try to stay nice and take care of yourselves. Thanks for coming. Bye.